This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good Erev Shabbos, Rabbi. Say this topic that we're doing now really needs a double session, but what could we do? We don't have one. So this is a major topic, a very interesting topic of Kabbalistic interest, of halachic interest, and of historical interest. So we begin with a comment of Rabbi Yaakov Emden in his classic Siddur, the Siddur of Rabbi Yaakov Emden. Says the Arizal, quoted by Rabbi Yaakov Emden in his comments to Kabbalas Shabbos. Erev Shabbos, behachnosas kala. Erev Shabbos, as we greet the Kala, the Shabbos queen, Haya mishte nesue Leah v'Yaakov, was when Yaakov Avinu married Leah. So Friday, as we're being koines the Kala, was the Suda of the Mishteh of Yaakov's marriage to Leah. Shenizda v'gimo leil Shabbos, and Yaakov had union with her Friday night. Siman ledavar, a siman is Mishteh. The gematria of Mishteh, which is 745, is gematria Shabbos Gadol. Shabbos is 702, and Gadol is 3743, 745. So a siman to the fact that Yaakov Avinu made his wedding Friday afternoon, coming into Shabbos, is the fact that the gematria of Mishteh is Shabbos Gadol, and that is why we say Friday night in Kabbalah Shabbos, Havu Hashem b'nei Elim. Havu Hashem b'nei Elim is gematria Yaakov. Havu Hashem kavod v'oz is gematria Kemach. By the way, what's Kemach? Netzach soid yerach Yaakov. Kemach is the gematria of Netzach soid yerach Yaakov. Havu Hashem kavod Shemai is gematria Zayas. And if you put the three together, you get Mishteh. You get Mishteh. And basically, it says, Lefisha Saviv Risham Yishalachon Hagam Lichbosh as Hamalkos Rashi Tevois Leah Seife Tevois Mishteh. Okay, so bottom line is Rabbi Yaakov Emden is saying that Yaakov Avinu married Leah Friday afternoon, and the Bia Rishina was Friday night. And then Rabbi Yaakov Emden repeats that again in his comments to Ata Kidashta. He writes that the Mefarshim say, and the Mefarshim who's referring to as Avudraham, is that even though on Yom Tov you have one tefillah throughout, Ata V'chartanu Mikol Amim, when it comes to Shabbos there are four separate tefillahs, Ata Kidashta, Yismach Moshe, Tikanta Shabbos, and Ata Echad. Why? Why are there four different Shemona Esreis? Because Shabbos is the union of the Chassan and the Kala being Knesset Yisrael, the Chassan being the Ribbanu Shalom, and every union there's Kedushin, there's Erosin, so Friday night is Kedushin, hence Ata Kidashta. Shabbos morning is Simchas Chassan V'Kala, Yismach Moshe. If you really love your Kala, you don't just give her 200 zuz, you give her Toisefes Ksuva, Musaf. And then finally the highest Madrega is Yichud, Ata Echad. That's what the Avudraham says. Well, the Rabbi Yaakov Emden adds that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called the Chassan, and we are the Kala. And Liyoideu Mevin Medaitu Leiv Mesamchim. And as we mentioned, the marriage of Yaakov and Leah was Leil Shabbos. And by the way, don't think Rachel wasn't there. She was under the bed also, but that's a shmooze for a different time. And when did Adam and Chava get married?
Friday afternoon.
Also, they got married Friday afternoon, and it was Leil Shabbos Kodesh. Because we know that the correct Zman of Zivug of Talmidei Chachamim, the Zman Zivug of Talmidei Chachamim is Me'erev Shabbos, and therefore that is why the significance of the marriage and the kedushin of Knesset Yisrael to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Shabbos, just like Yaakov and Leah, and just like Adam and Chava. Where does this concept come from? It comes from the Yalkut Ruveni. The Yalkut Ruveni, look at number 3 in this week's Parsha, Be'erev Shabbos Ba'achnasas Kala Hayamishteh Lavan. It was Lavan's party, L'Nesue Leah, Shenizdavig Imo Yaakov, Belel Shabbos. Yaakov had relation with Leah B'Yerushalayim Friday night. the Siman Ladavar, Mishteh, Gematria, Shabbos, Gadol. And Davar Be'itay, Ma'atayv is also Gematria, Shabbos, HaGadol. Okay, and where does this come from? This comes from the Sefer Kanfei Yoina and the Sefer Kavanais Ari. I looked in the Kanfei Yoina, it wasn't there, but if he says it's there, it's there. Okay, so in the Sefer Zecher David, which is from Rav David Zachus, he also brings down this idea. He quotes the Kanfei Yoina and the Yalkut Ruveni and the Shar Kavanais that Erev Shabbos B'Achnasas Kala was the Mishteh of Lavan, and Leah married Yaakov Leil Shabbos, and the Siman is Mishteh Gematria Shabbos Hagadol. Fine, very nice. And by the way, the Sefer Yalkut Chadash of Rabbi Yisrael Mi Balitz also brings down this Arizal, and he writes, even though the Devarim are Atikim, Mikomak Masha Shagam, Masha Sham Shagam Pashtan Shaldvarim Kachen, this is a simple interpretation. So Rabbi Glatstein, this is a concept that's brought down in the Sefer Kabbalah. Yaakov Avinu married Leah Erev Shabbos, and in Cain, the Zivug Rishona was Friday night. What's interesting is then it would come out he also married Rachel on Shabbos, because Lavan said, Malei Shavua Zois, wait a week. So then it comes out he would have also married Rachel on Friday night as well. Rabbi Glatstein, are you allowed to have Bia Rishona on Friday night? So it's discussed in many places in Shulchan Aruch. In Orach Chaim, it's in Reish Pesach Beis. Look at number 6. Mutter livol lechatchila besula b'Shabbos. You're allowed to be boil a besula on Shabbos. Chayvel, you're causing blood to come out. You're making a chabura. So the Gemara in Ksubah says what? Who remembers? Dam mifkad pakad. It's not typical blood that's absorbed in the flesh, but rather it's in a pouch, and you're just piercing the pouch, and therefore it's not a chabura, and it's not a problem of causing her tsar. And the Shulchan Aruch paskins this way in Even HaEzer Siman Samach Gimel as well. Mutter livo besula b'Shabbos. And the Taz says, by the way, that's the maskana of the Gemara and the Poskim. Now he quotes the Agudah that you have to have bia b'hatoya. Hatoya means it's a specific type of bia where you circumvent the blood. So the Agudah says you need to do it that way. And the Magen Avraham says it that way. And my father-in-law, the Bach, says nothing doing. The Gemara doesn't conclude that way that you have to do it b'hatoya. Because the Gemara in Ksubas concludes, dam mifgad pakad. And it's considered a kilkol, not a tikkun. Not like Rabbi Shaya Halevi, who says you have to be choshesh for aguda. We don't pay attention to the aguda. Ach maseh kivin shenag v'zanenu de'embol betchila b'Shabbos. Rabbi Shaya Halevi says, look, the minhag is not to have beer rishon on Friday night. So it's like something which is mutter that acher mar noigim by iser, and therefore you shouldn't do it. But says the Taz, what are you talking about? Not only is the maskana of the Gemara that you're allowed to have beer rishon on Friday night, ani oimer chalila lasos minhag iser b'zeh. You're not allowed to make a minhag that it's aser. And I heard clearly that Chasidim, Goinei Olam, are noyeg to be mekel, and that Bia Rishon is mutter Friday night, and therefore there's no problem, there's no chash, there's no chumrah, and that which people are noyeg not to boil, it's only because out of busha. And bottom line is it's mutter. Comes the Kaf HaChaim, Rabbi Yaakov Chaim Sofer, and he says like this: of course Bia Rishon is mutter on Friday night. Why? Because Yaakov, the proof is from this week's Parsha. Yaakov Avinu, according to the Rabbi Yaakov, then according to Yaakov Avinu, according to Arizal, the Yaakov Avinu married Leah Friday afternoon. That means the Zivug Rishona was Friday night. So that means that it's mutter to have Bia Rishona Friday night. Look in the number 9, Kavachai, mutter livel d'chil b'sul b'Shabbos. So the Bach says that in our community the minhag is not to. And therefore it's dvarim hanoige that other people are noig to be machmir that you shouldn't be mekel. But the Taz says about his father-in-law, chas v'shalom, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He says that he's wrong. Fine. And the Taz says his father-in-law was wrong. And I heard clearly that chasidim goinei olam are noyeg heter, and therefore it's not a problem. But says the Kavachayim, Ayin b'Yalkut Chadash. Look in Yalkut Chadash, which was number 9 on our sheets, who says Erev Shabbos Yaakov Avinu married Leah, and then it comes out Zivug Rishon was Lo Shabbos. So then it comes out if Yaakov Avinu was Boil B'Yom Rishon Erev Friday night. Of course, you're allowed to do it. Says the Kaf HaChaim B'chein HaMinhag Po Yirah Kodesh Yerushto. In here in Yerushto, in Sephardi land, they get married on Friday and they have Bir Rishona Friday night.
I think in Europe it was also very common to have Friday afternoon because they said that was Judah and they say it was a practical situation.
Well, we'll see about that. Okay, so there's a Sefer Megadim Chadashim, we quoted it last week, and the Megadim Chadashim says, why do you think Lavan was a smart guy? Why do you think he shadchened off Leah on Friday? Because he knew that if it would be any other night of the year, Yaakov would never mistakenly say, hey, who is this lady? I'm not really sure who it is, but it doesn't matter. Yaakov Avinu, if it's a normal night of the year, he's going to see exactly, who he's dealing with. But it's Friday night. And Friday night, you can't. It's dark. There are no neiros. You can't be Karla or Haner. That's why Lavan Dafka married off Leah on Friday. This way, he would have a shot of Yaakov Avinu being fooled, and Zayda Lavan got it right. He actually maxed out on this Arizal, where Yaakov Avinu Taka did not know who it was. Look at number 10. Vatam Shalavan Asas Nesui Leah Belel Shabbos. Dafka it could be, so Yaakov shouldn't realize that it's Leah. Because we know Yaakov Avinu was Shomer Shabbos Mechalalai, and he wouldn't light a candle on Shabbos. So therefore, by the way, the Medrash says that when he married Leah, they put out all the candles because it was right before Shabbos. Therefore, he didn't recognize until the morning. Now it happens to be that the Orach Chaim HaKadosh seems to imply that he was not aware of this Arizal and this comment of Rabbi Yaakov Emden. Rabbi Yaakov Emden came later, but he was not aware of this Arizal because Orach Chaim HaKadosh says that the reason why Yaakov Avinu did not know and recognize Leah from Rachel is, I'll let you look at the words that he says in number 11. It was because of the Kedusha of Yaakov Avinu, that he did not want to be Moitzi Levatala, so he sort of refrained from looking, and this way he would not be Mechalal his Kedusha. And he says, even Achar the Gemara Bia, he put out the candles, like the halacha during Zivug. So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh clearly is not learning that this took place on Shabbos, because he says Yaakov Avinu himself put out the candle. So, okay, be it as it may, it seems like it's not conclusive that this happened on Friday night, but that is what Rabbi Yaakov Emden writes in the name of the Yalkut Ruveni, in the name of the Arizal, in the name of the Kanfei Yoina. But let's, we haven't arrived at what I'm getting to. Yeah, okay. So, interesting, by the way, the Eshel Avram of Buchach writes that in his community, the minhag was not to have Bia Rishona Friday night, and the Munkacher is Matmiya, the Munkacher, the Minchas Elazar, Rav Elazar Shapira, in the Mukei Orach Chaim, he's Matmiya on the Eshel Avram, that he writes that the minhag is not to be boil Bia Rishona on Shabbos. He said, I don't know what he's talking about, I don't know where he lives. Maybe in Buchach there are some very smart people who... Look, this is the way it works. You have people who are rich, they do things, and then everybody thinks that's the minhag in Klal Yisrael. But that's not how things happen. So it could be in Buchach, some rich people, they decided you don't have Bia Rishona on Friday night. But Lamaisa says, the Munkach, we know, Rabbi Seinu Akdoshim, the Talmid Baal Shem Tov, that they Dafka got married on Friday, and they did Bia Rishona Friday night. Okay. Rabbi Isa, are you allowed to get married on Shabbos?
On Shabbos?
Are you allowed to get married on Shabbos?
Can you do a Kenyan on Shabbos?
That's what I'm asking you. I ask first. Are you allowed to get married on Shabbos?
I vote no.
Are you allowed to get married? I don't mean you personally. I mean in general, Jews.
Take a vote.
Simcha, there's no mitzvah of Simcha on Shabbos.
Some people say getting married is an onesh.
You have to give the ring. That's not a gift.
It's a Kenyan.
You got to give a gift on Shabbos.
Are you allowed to make a Kenyan?
Of course. For a Dvar Mitzvah, Avada. Allowed to give a Sefer. You're allowed to give something that they can use for Shabbos. You could give your wife jewelry on Shabbos. Some people are machmer, they never give gifts to their wife. They said, I might forget, I might give her on Shabbos, so then I never give them. But you're allowed to give your wife a gift on Shabbos. It's a mitzvah. Avada. What?
You have to tell her beforehand.
Why do you have to tell her beforehand? So not the halacha. Halacha is, for Dvar Mitzvah, you're allowed to give a gift. Or L'tzarech Shabbos, you're allowed to give a gift. Magen Avraham says. Yeah. So you're allowed to get married on Shabbos.
No.
So Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Shin Lamed Tes Ein Danin. We don't have court cases. Not that has nothing to do with this. And V'loi Mekachin. You're not allowed to get married.
Why?
What?
Why?
He didn't say. Okay. V'yesh matirin. I tell you what you need to know. What you don't need to know, I don't tell you. V'yesh matirin. The Ramah says some say you're allowed to. L'kadesh. Heicha de'en lo yisho ban. If you don't have a wife yet, you're gonna wait around forever without a wife? No. You're allowed to get married until you don't have a wife and children. V'hu adin hechnisa l'chuppah shari. The same halacha would be, you're allowed to be machnas her into the chuppah. Even though we don't pass in this way, you're not allowed to be machnas the chuppah on Shabbos. You could rely on this b'shas hadchak in extenuating circumstances. Ki gadol kavod abrius, because kavod abrius is very great. Why? So very, very often, says Rambam, what happens is mechutanim don't get along. So I don't know about you. I don't know about you. You probably never heard of such a thing. But the Rambam says it could be in some places that mechutanim don't get along, and actually that's usually what happens, says Rambam. Usually mechutanim don't get along, and that's fine. Don't people think, I don't speak to my mechutanim often enough. It's often enough. Believe me. Okay? You're not marrying the mechutanim. You're not marrying them. The kids have to. What?
Oh, yes, you are.
Anyway, the Ramah says, why don't they get along? They don't agree on money. It's always about money. So what happened is, if very often the conversations they are protracted, right? And it's Friday afternoon, and they still hadn't cut the deal yet. And they're about to say Kabbalah Shabbos, so sometimes the deal takes until Shabbos. So now what? The poor couple's sitting around the whole week, and it's already Shon Shabbos. So what are you going to do? Oh, you can't get married on Shabbos. They're sitting there b'tsar because the mechutanim can't get along. Their parents are not getting along. So then oisen achupa v'kedushim l'Shabbos Shabbos get married because they hate Friday night. Holachvar huchanu l'suda because the suda is already prepared. And elamai. Chuppah, u'nasuin have a biush l'kal l'chasan and l'yachna, so it's going to be embarrassing to them. The parents should try to see to it that they don't delay things until Shabbos. But l'maisa, if they're arguing and they're quarreling and things are not, they can't be shava b'shava and they don't settle the matter until Friday night, then let them get married, do kedushin, nasuin Friday night, b'shalom al Yisrael. That's the psak of the Ramah.
The edim don't sign?
What?
Signature of edim?
What about it?
You don't have to.
On Shabbos.
I understand, so it's okay.
So do it before.
Can't break the plate if there's a hook.
Don't break the plate.
So not market.
Chances are that she's going to ask him to clear off the dishes and he's going to drop them, so he'll break the plate. Okay, fine. So the shaila is the Ramah is the Mechaber Paskins, you don't get married on Shabbos. The Ramah says Yesh Matirin. And the Ramah says even though we don't paskin that way, but B'shas Hadchak you could be Samech and you could get married Friday night. Now, every halacha has a story to it. So what's the story behind this halacha, the Ramah, that b'shas hadchak you could get married on Friday night? This is one of the most famous tshuvas in the Shas Tshuvas Ramah, a famous story that happened in Crakow. And basically what happened is, look at number 16, is Shas Tshuvas Simin Kuf Chaf Hey Ve'eshma Acharai Kol Rash Gadol. I heard a loud noise. Asher Haviru Kol B'machne Leimar, that there was a proclamation saying Habitu Acharei Moshe, look after Moshe. V'maisa hanaisa al yedei mikarev. Basically, people had problems with my psak. The Ramah says, "Am Moshe, shesadarti kedushin tachas hachuppah. I was masada kedushin under the chuppah kederach haaretz. Shakol yoidim seder hakala. Lama nechnas al chuppah. Everybody knows why the kala goes to the chuppah. V'hoya be'ishon laila. It was at night. V'leil Shabbos. Kisho mechsav an hour and a half into the night. And the reason why I was Masada Kedushin Friday night, everybody knows the reason. Here's the story. You ready? Everyone ready? Ish haya ba'aretz. There was a guy. V'tama kesef mimenu. He had no money. V'shadach bita gedola leben zugay. He married off his oldest daughter to a good shidduch haroila. V'hi b'mei shidducha. It was during the engagement. Asher Arach Hazman. It was a long time at Knisas l'chuppah. Halach ha'av lo ilamai. The father died. V'hinei chayim l'chol Yisrael. And now this girl is what? A Yisoima. V'nishra habash shkul v'kalmuda in la'avaim. All she has is kiyam kroivim nasu lo ruchayim. She has relatives and they can't stand her. Ve'elimo inei mimena. And no, everyone's ignoring the kala. Zulasi goyel echad. Achi ima, except for her uncle. Asher hechnisa lebeisai, he takes her into his house. Ki ein la goyel kariveno, vayikasher ba b'yamim zman nisweh asher hayaroi litzbayach tavach v'achein. It came time for the party to prepare the suda. Lo irasa shum tmunas hanadunya u'shad tzrachim zulasi koyel echad habala shetitba v'tachin atzmo lechasna ki yila hanadunya. She's not getting any money. All the jewelry, all the presents, nothing doing. Nobody's sending her anything. They just send her a message, go to the mikvah, we're getting married. Okay, so the poor Besula Hanal Asa Kashatziva Le Nashim Ashkenas, she listened to the yentas of the neighborhood. V'shamu L'koilam, and she listened to them. Gam Kisu Oisa B'yoim Vav B'hinuma, they gave her the crown, Kederach HaBesula Z'chashanatu Tzili Erev, and it's Friday night, Chamad Kiddush Hayom, Shol L'kravel Litin HaNadunya. It's time for her kroivim to give the nadunya. Kimtzu Yedeim. They held their fist tight. V'chasru mimatnas yadam aroi lahem. V'yanechser min nadunya kamat shlish nadunya. So her relatives, they basically retracted on a third of the money. They said, we're not giving money. She's not our daughter. Gam ha'chasen nasa gachar. The chasen is also having cold feet. V'lei rotza b'shum oifim l'kansa. She doesn't want to marry her. All the manhigei ha'ir are saying to the chassan, look, you can't embarrass the lady. You said you're going to marry her, though you can't pull out now. They said you can't embarrass Bas Yisrael because the kesef, just because chassan you're not going to be able to learn for 10 years, so you learn for 9 years in Lakewood. It's okay. So basically, the chassan wants to back out. He's not getting his money, so. He doesn't want to listen. Rak kefes and chirish atam aznoi v'lo sham l'kom l'achshem v'lo kol garas chacham tanidanu v'al yidei zeh nimshach hazman mikach tatos and rivas kedar sh'amru les ksuba the les play tigra, and it was my satan, and basically it comes Shabbos and finally the chassan agrees to get married. Says Ramah, chacham eina b'roishai. If I don't marry them off now, who knows what's going to be with this couple? V'shaloi levayish Bas Yisrael haguna kamti v'sidarti kedushin bezman anal. V'nei ba'asher malinim alai, people are complaining against me. So basi lahaser tuanasa me'iti, I wanted to counteract their complaints, to bring a raya that in fact b'shas adchak you're allowed to get married on Shabbos. So you see, obviously, the case that the Ramah was Masada Kedushin on Friday night was very, very extenuating circumstances. He had a poor kala. Chassan wasn't happy with the cufflings that he was getting, and he wasn't happy with the chassan shas. He wanted the Oiz Bahadar deluxe edition, and he was only getting the Vagshal without the bold print of the Rashi Devei Maschel, and he said that's it.
So material,
right? Respect. And the chassan was about to pull out, so the Ramah had to seize the moment. Let's see why the Ramah felt he was allowed to do this. Mikol Makoim. Kol ki hani mili mal yasa. Leimru mishmai lahater ha'in b'chai hai gavna. For all of the above good reasons, I felt it's mutter. Shahaya shas hadchak. V'harishta habesula mispayeshas. Im tamtin im achupa achar tfilasa. Ad la'achar Shabbos. The kala would be very embarrassed. Gam ki einu miderech hamakom esleilich b'hinuma ad achar Shabbos. When she's going to wear this ridiculous crown that they put on her head until Shabbos is over, and make the wedding on Sunday. Like Goyim do. Goyim make their weddings on Sunday. Goyim and in New York, right? Ukadaihu Rabbeinu Tam lismech la b'shas hadchak. And we know Rabbeinu Tam is the one who says you're allowed to get married on Shabbos. So he's great enough to be samech b'shas hadchak. Certainly that the Gemara is even mashal like him, and other Rishonim write this way that b'doich gadol you're allowed to get married on Shabbos. Mashmir the b'doich gadol yesh lahater ve'en l'chol doich gadol mizeh. She's the Yisoima, she's gadola, she's mispayeshes. And if we stare the shidduch, who knows what's going to happen? Kamat l'shnoisa, mikal b'sudas v'gadol, kavod abriya shidduch, aloisa say the loisasar, mikal dvar masher yerucha. We know that getting married on Shabbos is only Nisa Drabanan, and Gadol Kavod Abriyos could be Doicha Nisa Drabanan. By the way, what's the Gzera Drabanan? Why not get married on Shabbos? We didn't say yet. Because you might write.
Yeah, you might be going.
Because you might write. Well, that's only Nisa Drabanan. Or because Yushalmi says you're not make a kinyan. So in this case, we have to be Choishesh because of Gadol Kavod Abriyos. Says around we could push off a lav in the Torah. And we need to be choishesh shleis batlo hashiduchim legamri, and the zivug is going to be butter because of all the fights. To the point where she almost wanted to rip off that crown on her head, and therefore gadol hashalom. And even in this case, where it's not ish ve'ishta, but it's only bezivug, then he says yesh lahakum because of that kitsas agidabe, like Rabbeinu Tam says. Fine, and therefore the Rama says I was mekel. Let's see his conclusion. Umali laharech. Why do I need to be marach here? Puk chazi mayam daber b'chomakoim. Look at the minhag ha'olam. Prat b'yireinu asher yesh ba kibbutz im toidel akel. Ulafam oisim hey oivav chubas b'yam echad. Sometimes we know they make 5 or 6 weddings a day, and they last till the night. And very often in Crakow, people get married Friday night. Nobody says anything. And what difference does it make if it's in the beginning of Shabbos or an hour or two? There's no difference. Once it's Shabbos, it's Shabbos. Okay. It is a shasatchak, and therefore that avada l'charchila yesh lahachmir to try to get it in before Shabbos. But if you already prepared the whole wedding, and the hour is late, so to push off the wedding at that moment is mamish a shas atchak. We're going to make another wedding, and therefore that's why I was mekel. So this is the history and the story behind the psak of the Rama. And the Rama had a Talmud who wrote a commentary on the Mordechai called Chidushay Anshe Shem. And at the end of Masechta Be'ah that we're learning now, he reports this episode of the Rama. Look at number 17. Mecheno Isi Lemori Hagun Ramosh Isulis in Crakow. There was a Yisaima, a poor Yisaima, who was married to someone who was Hagun, and her brother married her off, and there was a big fight, and it delayed until the hour, it delayed until Shabbos, and the Rama did not refrain from giving Kedushin because he was afraid that one party would renege, and therefore the Rama said like this. The Rama said, don't daven Marav yet. First, let's finish the Kedushin, and he did so, and then they daven Marav. So now the question is, okay, this is a psak of the Rama, that you could get married Friday night, b'shas adchak. Again, this has nothing to do really with Rachel and Leah, because Leah got married Friday afternoon. It was just Zivug Rishona was Friday night. But I just want to point out that not everybody was happy with the psak of the Rama. Historically, if you look in the Aruch HaShulchan, the Aruch HaShulchan says, V'hinei ledina kaim alan koroi v'apoiskim v'gam Rabbeinu Tam atzmai kasa b'tshuva she'in mekadshin only midocha gadol. And even if you did kedushin, you're not to do chuppah on Shabbos. However, the Rama writes, some allow you to mekadesh if you're not married yet, or to be machnas chuppah. And even though we don't paskin this way, you could be samech on it b'shas hadchak. Why? Gadol kavod abriyos. And then the Rama says sometimes the family can't get along. Now, says the Aruch HaShulchan, the reason the Rama paskin that way is because of this famous story. Vayeitzey Rabbeinu Rama atzmai hoisa ma'isa kazu b'Crakow. He was the Av Bezdin, and there was a Yisaima that the Kedushin got pushed off, and he was Masad Kedushin, like he writes in the Tshuva. V'lo aza olav kol hamadina. Everybody poured out their critique on the Rama. And the Rama speaks at length to explain Gadol Kavod Abriyos and the Tzar Chasam Mekala. But the story is not over. From that Maisa and on, says Aruch HaShulchan, they made a takana in Crakow that nobody could ever get married Friday night. In other words, whether they agreed with the Rama or not, which they didn't, But from then and on, there is a Takana Gemur in Crakow.
Friday night or Friday afternoon?
Friday night. Oh, on Friday on Erev Shabbos. B'chlal, you can't get married Erev Shabbos. Shaloi lasei shum chav Erev Shabbos. V'tiken yafahu. It's a good takana. Dekama kukulam yesh aydei. Many bad things can happen. Uban lidei chilo Shabbos, especially in the winter, when the day is short, and you have to spend till at least 11:45 learning in the kollel. So how many hours do you have already, right? Says the Aruch HaShulchan of Chamakam she'efshar lahana kain. Any community that they can have such a minhag not to get married, b'chlal on Erev Shabbos, schara meruba min hashamayim, you'll get great reward from heaven. B'akapanim gam k'sheyefshar lahana kain. Even if you can't make that minhag, it's an obligation on any God-fearing person to see to it, to make the chuppah as early as possible. So I just want to bring in that we mentioned that the Psak of the Ramah, who said B'shas Hadcha Gadol you could get married Friday night, was based on that story that happened. And the Aruch HaShulchan said many people had tinus. There's a sort of a historical work about Crakow called Klilas Yoifi. And he also records by Rav Chaim Nosson Dembitzer. He says in number 19, Ukafi hanira lo yiskimu imay az kol b'nei hachaburapai. By Razu, none of the rabbis agreed with this. Shehem ha yisayvim lesser b'zeh. They held, no matter what, even Mishas Adchak, you cannot get married Friday night. Ukadas smag, like the smag that the number 17, the Chidushei Anshe Shem quotes, Savil HaMordechai, Ukedelasa Siyag V'geder L'davar, in order to make a fence, Hiskinu Chachmei G'dor L'Yerpoi, the elders of the congregation were Masakin, Kiminei Oz V'hala, and from then on, Lo Yasa Oid Shum Chubav Kedushim B'yam HaShishi in Crakow until today. And if you need to, you do it out of the city. Now, Rabbi Glatstein, I'm going to tell you another story. But in
other cities in Europe, I think it was a custom that they often did get married Erev Shabbos.
Not in Crakow.
Not in Crakow.
Well, we'll see what happened. There's another story about a marriage in Crakow. Karach wasn't at that wedding. He was in the ground. But, I don't know, maybe he was invited. Look at number 20. This is the history. It's printed in the... we know one of the Svarim that the Ramah wrote was the Sefer Torah Ha'olah, which is about the Karbanos and the Beis HaMikdash and the Mishkan. So there's a biography there about the Ramah, and there's a famous story. It says, Yadua Maisarav V'Noyer. There's an awesome story that happened in the city of Crakow in the times of Ramah with a very despicable family, a low-standing family, that they decided to make a wedding Friday night. But besides that, it was a very public spectacle, and they had orchestra, and they were playing music openly, and there were Mechalo Shabbos b'far Hesya. And the Ramah sent a message to tell them, cut it out, but they didn't listen. And he says that he sent them a warning, Azhara Chamura v'Gzeres Chai v'Kayam, with the force of the Mara Da'asra, but they didn't pay attention. So Ramah got very angry, and he sent them one final message, and he said, why are you rebelling against Hashem to Mechala Shabbos b'shat nefesh? Mechala leha ma'is yumas. And if you don't listen, you are going to have a bitter end, and you're going to die misa meshuna. So when they heard this, they mocked him ba'azos metzach. As soon as they did so, suddenly the earth opened its mouth, swallowed the entire wedding hall and the walls, and they all went down together with the chassan and kala, b'sha'el, alive.
Correct.
Now the mechutanim were there, and all the musicians are there. They're all swallowed. Chassan and kala, mechutanim, the shver, the shviger, everybody, all the musicians, and they were lost forever. And as you could be sure, the Ramah had a little bit more respect the next Shabbos when he came into Shul.
Wasn't any talk.
And that area, that wedding hall, remained completely empty, letel olam, as a zecher to this miracle. And until World War II, there was a plaque there with the whole story. And from that time and on, In Crakow, they do not celebrate a chasana or nisuin on Leil Shabbos Kodesh. And if you want to have a wedding in Crakow on Friday night, you got to go to the city of Fadagarza, which is nearby, and it's like a sister city to Crakow, and make your weddings over there. So it's brought down in the Sefer Tiferes Moshe, which is also a biography of the Ramah, which is printed in some books of the Torah Sa'olah. Says the reason for the takana is not only, as the Aruch HaShulchan says, because the Rabbanim were unhappy with the Psak of the Ramah, but it's because of this story that happened, that from this story and on, they were masakein that not to have a wedding in Crakow.
They were doing Mechal Shabbat.
Okay. So from now on, they won't be Mechal Shabbos.
No, you did the Choshen.
What?
No singing, no.
That's not how takanas work. That means it's likely to come to Chilul Shabbos. So since it's, I mean, what kind of wedding are you going to have? What kind of wedding are you going to have if you don't have music? So it's not a good idea. So therefore, they made a takana in Crakow not to get married. So if you want to get married Friday night, stay in New York. Don't go to Crakow. Okay, let's end with the following: the Imrei Noyam of Jacob. If you remember last week, we know that Rivka tells Yaakov, "Yashavta imo yamim achodim." So we said a pshat from the Vilna Gaon that yamim refers to year, like it says yamim tehei gilulasai, and achodim refers to a designated day. Which designated day? Shabbos. Meaning Rivka said, "Stay with Lavan a year of Shabbos." Now, how long is a year of Shabbos? 7 years. Because in 350 days, you have 50 Shabbosos. So in 7 years, you have 350 Shabbosos, but you have the extra 4 days. So 4 times 7 is 28, and then in 28 days, you have another 4 Shabbosos. So the Imrei Noyam says another interesting thing. Let's see if we could figure it out, and we'll end with this. In the pasuk, Hava es ishti kimalu yamai, Perish Rashi, yamim sha'amra lo imai. Yaakov Avinu says to Lavan, "Give me my wife, because my days are full." What are the days? The 7 years that his mother said. So why does he say, "Give me my wife, because my days are full"? Why does he say the days that my mother told me? He should say, "My work for you is done." Why doesn't he say simply, "Shenishlemu yimei ha'avdos"? His work is over. That his mother told him Yamim Achadim, which is a remes to 7 years. Ki Yamim is a year, and Achadim, we explained, refers to Shabbos. Shabbos has no zivug. Now Lavan said Male Shavua Zos. Literally he meant what? The week. The week. Male Shavua Zos. The week. Now v'nira ki yadua asher Eved Avram ba lezaveg zivuga shel Yitzchak be'erev Shabbos. We know that Eliezer wanted to be mezaveg Yitzchak and Rivka erev Shabbos, like the Zohar says in Vayeitzey. So probably Yaakov came to the Be'er when? Erev Shabbos, because that's the time of zivugim. So he probably wanted to marry his wife. He makes the Vart Friday, and he'll get married on Wednesday. Why? Because Chazal say, Besula neseis liyaim haravi, the Mishnah says in Ksubas. The only thing is, on Wednesday night, if Yaakov came there Erev Shabbos, then the 7 years are not up until Erev Shabbos. V'nigmar hazman sheva shanim be'erev Shabbos. So Lavan says, Tzak Lavan malei shavua zois. Wait out the week, and then you'll get paid. Ve'eten l'chas Rachel. Aval Yaakov Amar kimalu yamai. In other words, even though the 7 years are not up yet,
He had a year of Shabbosim, right?
meaning Nishlamu hayamim sha'amar lo imai. The days that my mother said are up. Why? Kikfar ha'yashana sh'Shabbos is k'may sha'amar lo imai. He already had a year of Shabbos. But even though the 7 years, in other words, what did Lavan say to Yaakov? Lavan says to Yaakov, Malei Shavua Zois, and then you get paid, and I'll give you Rachel. But Yaakov says, no, my 7 years are up. My 7 years are up. Shabbos was the last Shabbos. I'm long overdue, and therefore Yaakov Avinu said, "Give me Rachel now. Havali es ishti ve'avoya leha." Rabbi said, "Agun Shabbos."
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.